Where did all the samples go? Commander Xyla's voice echoed through the sterile lab. The usual hum of equipment was now overshadowed by the eerie emptiness of the microbial storage. We can't afford another setback. Find out what's going on, now. Commander Xyla stood on the bridge of the Star Explorer, surveying the vast expanse of stars. Her antennae twitched as she reviewed the day's reports. The ship, a marvel of alien engineering, was a bustling hub of scientific discovery. Yet, despite the crew's diligence, there was one recent addition that stood out: Joe, the human janitor. Joe had been hired 2 weeks ago to maintain cleanliness on the ship. His work ethic was impeccable. Every surface gleamed under his care. The crew marveled at how spotless the ship had become. Xyla herself had complimented Joe several times, appreciating the pristine environment he maintained. However, today, something was off. "Commander, we've got a problem," Dr. Vrex, the ship's biologist, reported. "Several of our microbial samples are missing." Xyla's eyes narrowed. "Missing? How is that possible?" "I'm not sure, but they vanished without a trace. It's as if they were never here," Vrex said, frustration evident in his voice. Xyla nodded, her mind racing. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Start by checking the logs. Who's had access to the lab recently?" Vrex hesitated. "Well, Joe's been very thorough with his cleaning. He's been in and out of the lab frequently." The commander frowned. Joe's dedication was admirable, but this was too much of a coincidence. "I want a full investigation, discreetly. We don't want to alarm him just yet." Over the next few days, the crew watched Joe closely. They noted his routine, which included meticulous cleaning sessions in every corner of the ship, even restricted areas. Joe always had a plausible excuse: just keeping everything in top shape, Commander. Despite his explanations, Xyla's suspicions grew. She ordered a covert background check on Joe. The results were unsettling. Joe's employment history had gaps, and his references were oddly vague. One evening, Xyla decided to confront him indirectly. She found Joe in the lab, polishing the equipment. "Joe, I've been meaning to ask." Xyla began casually. "What did you do before joining us on the Star Explorer?" Joe looked up, his expression guarded. "Oh, a bit of everything, really. Maintenance work, odd jobs here and there. Nothing as exciting as this, of course." Xyla nodded, keeping her tone light. "We're lucky to have you. Your work has been impeccable." Joe smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just doing my part, Commander." That night, Xyla gathered her senior officers. "We have enough to suspect Joe is more than he appears. We need concrete evidence before we act." The next morning, Xyla found Joe in the storage bay, meticulously arranging supplies. She decided to test him further. "Joe, we've had some issues with missing samples. Have you noticed anything unusual?" Joe's eyes flickered with a hint of panic before he composed himself. "No, Commander, just doing my rounds, keeping things clean." Xyla nodded, but inside her resolve hardened. "Thank you, Joe. Keep up the good work." As she walked away, she knew the time for subtlety was over. The crew had to act swiftly before more damage was done. The pristine cleanliness of the Star Explorer had masked a sinister plot, and Xyla was determined to uncover the truth. In her quarters, Xyla activated the SecureCom link. "Team, prepare for a covert operation. We need to catch him in the act. Report to the lab at 200 hours. As she closed the com, Xyla felt a surge of determination. The Star Explorer's mission was too important to be derailed by a saboteur. Joe, or whoever he truly was, had underestimated them. "Time to clean up this mess," she muttered, steeling herself for the confrontation ahead. The Star Explorer drifted silently through the vastness of space, its crew engrossed in their various tasks. Despite the ship's newfound cleanliness, a growing sense of unease spread among the crew. Commander Xyla stood in the lab, her brow furrowed as she stared at the empty sample containers. "Commander, We've lost another batch of microbial cultures, Dr. Vrex announced, frustration clear in his voice. That's the third time this week. Sila's eyes narrowed. We need answers. Dr. Vrex, have you noticed anything unusual? Dr. Vrex hesitated. Well, it's strange, but Joe has been in and out of the lab more frequently. He always claims he's just cleaning. Cleaning? Sila echoed, suspicion tinging her words. I'll have a word with him. In the meantime, keep a close eye on our remaining samples. Later that day, Sila called a meeting with her senior officers. The air was thick with tension as they gathered in the briefing room. We've had too many incidents involving our samples. Sila began. I've started to suspect our new janitor, Joe. We need to monitor him closely without raising his suspicion. Lieutenant Rin nodded. I've noticed he's been in restricted areas more often. Should we restrict his access? Not yet, Sila replied. We need to gather evidence first, discreetly monitor his activities and report anything unusual. As the meeting adjourned, the crew members exchanged worried glances. Lieutenant Rin assigned crew members to shadow Joe's movements, making sure they remained undetected. Over the next few days, the surveillance paid off. Crew members reported seeing Joe in places he had no reason to be, often lingering near sensitive equipment. One evening, Lieutenant Rin found Joe in the lab, fiddling with a control panel. What are you doing here, Joe? Rin asked, trying to sound casual. Joe looked up, surprised. Just cleaning, Lieutenant. The panel looked a bit dusty. Rin's eyes narrowed, but he forced a smile. Be careful around the equipment. Some of it is very delicate. Joe nodded and quickly left, but the encounter only heightened Rin's suspicions. He reported the incident to Sila, who decided it was time to dig deeper into Joe's background. That night, Sila accessed the ship's personnel database. As she delved into Joe's records, she found inconsistencies. His employment history was patchy, with gaps and vague references. Alarm bells rang in her mind. This doesn't add up, Sila muttered to herself. Who are you, Joe? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Sila ordered a thorough background check. Within hours, the results came back. Joe's records were falsified. He wasn't just a janitor. He was an agent from a rival faction. Sila's heart raced as she convened her officers again. Joe is not who he claims to be. His real name is Jax, and he's an operative sent to sabotage our mission. The revelation stunned the room into silence. We need to act quickly and carefully, Sila continued. Lieutenant Rin, double the surveillance. Dr. Vrex, secure all sensitive materials. We confront him at the first sign of sabotage. The crew sprang into action, their previous doubts replaced by a steely resolve. They knew the gravity of the situation and the threat Jax posed to their mission. As Sila watched her team mobilize, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. They had to outsmart Jax before he could cause irreparable damage. With their newfound determination, the crew prepared to confront the saboteur lurking among them. Commander Sila's eyes narrowed as she examined the hidden transmitter found in Joe's quarters. The crew had gathered in the control room, tension palpable. Dr. Vrex stood beside Sila, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. This confirms it, Sila said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. Joe is an undercover agent. Gasps rippled through the room. The crew exchanged worried glances. They had trusted Joe, welcomed him aboard, and now felt the sting of betrayal. Commander, what do we do? Asked Ensign Tarek, his usually calm demeanor shaken. Sila took a deep breath. We confront him, but we need to be smart about it. He's dangerous and has already sabotaged our work. We can't afford any mistakes. The crew moved swiftly, coordinating their plan. Sila, Dr. Vrex, and a few others made their way to the janitor's closet, where Joe was last seen. Sila motioned for silence as they approached. She could hear Joe humming a tune inside, oblivious to the impending confrontation. Scylla signaled to Dr. Vrex, who nodded and opened the door with a swift, decisive motion. Joe looked up, surprised but quickly composed himself. "Commander, what's going on?" he asked, trying to maintain his usual demeanor. "Enough, Jax," Scylla snapped. "We know who you really are." For a moment, Joe, Agent Jax, stood still, his eyes darting around as if calculating his next move. Then, with a resigned sigh, he dropped the pretense. "So, you found out. Took you long enough." The room's atmosphere turned icy. Scylla stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "Why are you here? What's your mission?" Jax chuckled. A cold, mirthless sound. "My mission? To ensure your research never sees the light of day. My faction can't allow you to succeed." "Who sent you?" Dr. Vrex demanded, stepping closer, his fists clenched. "Does it matter?" Jax replied. "You've already lost precious time. My job is done." Scylla's mind raced. She had to keep him talking, find a way to turn the situation around. "What made you take this path, Jax? You don't seem like someone who believes in pointless destruction." Jax's expression faltered for a moment, a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. "You wouldn't understand, Commander. It's about survival. About my people. We're all just trying to survive," Scylla said softly. "But this isn't the way. We can find a better path." Jax shook his head, the moment of vulnerability gone. "It's too late for that." Suddenly, Jax lunged forward, trying to escape. Scylla reacted instantly, blocking his path while Dr. Vrex tackled him to the ground. The crew quickly restrained Jax, securing him with heavy-duty restraints. "Take him to the brig," Scylla ordered, her voice firm. "We'll deal with him later." As Jax was led away, Scylla felt a mixture of relief and determination. They had uncovered the saboteur, but the damage was done. She turned to Dr. Vrex. "We need to assess the extent of his sabotage. How much have we lost?" Dr. Vrex nodded. "I'll get a team on it immediately." The door to the brig closed with a decisive clang, sealing Agent Jax within. Commander Scylla exhaled, her thoughts already shifting to the next steps. They had uncovered the saboteur, but the damage he had done still needed to be addressed. "Dr. Vrex, report on the status of the lab," Scylla commanded as they walked briskly toward the science deck. "Commander, we've lost about 40% of our microbial samples. The remaining cultures are stable, but we'll need to reintroduce lost species to restore our ecosystem," Dr. Vrex replied, his voice tinged with frustration. Scylla nodded, her mind racing with solutions. "We need to act swiftly. Re-establishing our microbial life forms is critical for our ongoing research. Let's focus on what we can salvage first." The crew, though shaken, moved with renewed purpose. In the lab, Scylla joined them, her hands working alongside her team. They carefully cataloged the damage, identifying which samples could be revived and which needed replacement. The atmosphere was tense but driven, each member understanding the urgency of their task. "Commander, these samples seem irreparable," said Nira, a junior scientist, holding a vial up to the light. Scylla examined the sample, her expression hardening. "Set those aside. We'll prioritize what we can save." Despite the setbacks, the team made significant progress. The hours blended into a blur of activity, the once chaotic lab gradually returning to order. As they worked, Scylla implemented stricter security protocols, ensuring such an infiltration could never happen again. Access to sensitive areas was now heavily restricted, and surveillance was upgraded across the ship. "Scylla, we need a contingency plan for the future," Dr. Vrex suggested during a brief pause. "I agree," Scylla said, wiping her brow. "We'll establish a redundant system for our most critical samples and maintain backups in separate locations." Their resolve strengthened with each passing hour. The crew's camaraderie and shared determination transformed their workspace into a hive of productivity. Even in the face of adversity, they found a rhythm, a testament to their resilience and teamwork. By the end of the day, significant headway had been made. The lab, while not fully restored, was functional. Essential samples were stabilized, and the crew could finally take a moment to breathe. They gathered in the common area, their faces reflecting both exhaustion and relief. Sala addressed them, her voice steady. "We faced a severe threat, but our swift actions and cooperation have brought us through. We've learned a valuable lesson in vigilance. Let's ensure we remain prepared for any future challenges." The crew nodded, a silent agreement passing among them. They were not just colleagues, but a united front against any adversary that might come their way. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped the crew. They had not only thwarted a saboteur but had reinforced their commitment to their mission and to each other. In her quarters, Scylla reviewed the day's events, her thoughts interrupted by a chime from her console. It was a message from Central Command, acknowledging their report and commending their quick action. She smiled, a sense of pride welling within her. "We're stronger than ever," she murmured to herself, "and we'll keep it that way." With the immediate crisis behind them, the crew of the Star Explorer resumed their scientific endeavors, their spirits unbroken. They were ready for whatever lay ahead, bound by a shared determination and an unyielding commitment to their mission. Their vigilance would ensure that the stars were not just their destination, but a testament to their resilience and unity.